All right. Well, welcome everyone to Grow Montana's second session at today's Aero Expo 2021 in review and vision for the future. We are excited to share with you some of the things we've been doing over the last year, specifically results around our member and ally survey that we conducted over the summer. So just a quick agenda overview for today's program. We will kind of in the welcome session right now, and then I will go into some background on Grow Montana. And then at around 2:15, we'll do that presentation on the member and ally survey results. And then after that, we will have some breakout sessions where you'll all be able to share some conversation around the results of our survey and some questions that we have outlined as guides. And then when we return, we'll have some share outs, and then we'll do some closing remarks, and we will adjourn at 2:30. And just want to do a quick shout out and thank you to our breakout facilitators today, Gretchen Boyer, Minna Choi, and Robin Kelson. So just some quick introduction. My name's Mara Henn. I work at the National Center for Appropriate Technology at our Butte office. I am a community food system specialist at NCAT, and along with my work at with farmers markets and the Harvest of the Month program, I've also been the Grow Montana coordinator since the winter of 2019. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Grow Montana, here is a little background information. Grow Montana is a grassroots broad-based coalition founded in 2005 to advocate for changes in state policies that would strengthen Montana's food and agricultural economies. Our common purpose is to promote community economic development and education policies that support sustainable Montana-owned food production, processing, and distribution, and that improve all of our citizens' access to healthy Montana foods. The coalition has since led food systems research, produced educational materials, and stewarded significant policy changes to support Montana's food producers. Our coalition is comprised of representatives from each of our member organizations and extends to their individual memberships, which Grow Montana considers our allies. Our member organizations work at the state, regional, and local levels. In 2021, we had 21 farm and food organizations work to advance our policy priorities, which included a soil health study bill, the Farm to School Grant Act bill, and the Double SNAP Dollars bill. NCAT is the fiscal sponsor of the coalition, and the work of the coalition is guided by our steering committee, recognized on this slide, along with several subcommittees to help move our work forward. You can learn more about Grow Montana at our website, www.growmontana.org. And I'd like to take a moment to my co-presenter today, Minna Choi. I'd like for her to be able to have an opportunity to chime in and introduce herself before we launch into the presentation.
Thanks, Mara. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you all today. So my name is Minna Choi. I'm a program assistant at the Natural Resources Defense Council based out of Bozeman. I'm involved with Grow Montana for about the past year and a half, serving on the Communications and Media Subcommittee and the Visioning Subcommittee. And Mara and I and the rest of the Visioning Subcommittee have been on this survey process for the last couple of months, and just really looking forward to sharing our results with you all, and also engaging in a community conversation around the future and vision of Grow Montana. So thanks for being here, everyone. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Mara.
Great, thanks, Minna. All right, so without further ado, our 2021 member and ally survey analysis and considerations. So some introduction and background on this. In the fall of 2020, Grow Montana began exploring what role the coalition can and should be playing to advance a healthy, equitable, and resilient food system in Montana. Grow Montana has historically focused on policy outcomes during legislative sessions, However, we know that a healthy, equitable, and resilient food system will require new policies and much more. So this process really started last year at Arrow's 2020 Expo in one of our sessions, and Grow Montana led a discussion there about the coalition's future. The feedback from that session led to the development of the visioning subcommittee, who are acknowledged on this slide, that has overseen a process to seek feedback from Grow Montana members, allies, and food system stakeholders. One aspect of this process was to develop a member and ally survey to provide a tool to help the coalition along its path in centering equity and inclusion in our work. So just a note about the term centering equity. We use this phrase a lot in our analysis, and though the coalition is still working on developing a shared understanding of equity, our general understanding is that centering equity is a process to ensure that policies we develop both internally and legislatively are not harmful to or advantage one group or organization over another. So a little bit about our survey process. We developed 2 surveys, one for current members at all of our tier levels. So that would include our steering committee, our critical advisory members, and our allies, and one for potential members or allies who are working in the food system. The final written report and this presentation includes the perspectives from both the ally and member surveys. So on our methods, after the survey tool was developed using SurveyMonkey, individual email invitations with a survey link were sent to members. After 2 reminder emails, follow-up calls were done with the few remaining coalition members. 86% of our current coalition members completed the survey, including the entirety of the steering committee. The survey identified allies as organizations or interested citizens who are working in the food system space, but are not current members of Grow Montana. The survey was emailed to 8 Grow Montana allies, and we heard back from 3. The survey had 4 focus areas: member demographics, role of Grow Montana, member and structure, and equity. So what did we learn from the member demographics? The majority of our coalition members are based in Western Montana. Our member organizations tend to be small with less than 10 staff members. Their operating budgets were mostly over $150,000, and member organizations engage mostly in work focused at the state level. And just under half of our current members have been involved in the coalition for more than 4 years. For our ally demographics, 2 allies responded that their work was state focused, and 1 reported that their work was focused regionally. 2 allies responded that they have less than 5 employees, and the 3rd reported having over 20 employees at their organization. 2 have offices located in Bozeman and Livingston, and 1 does not have a central office. So the role of Grow Montana in food and ag work. Grow Montana represents a diversity of stakeholders working on a large suite of issues in the food system space. The graph on this slide shows the different food focus areas our coalition members are working on. Food access was the highest policy priority for coalition members, followed by farm to school and then food processing. Approximately half of our members provided other priorities that were not listed in the survey. Policies concerning community food-based systems and farmland conservation were of the most interest. Grow Montana's allies' policy priorities rank similarly to current members. Allies noted food access and farm to school are the highest policy priorities. Allies also offered additional priorities that might be of interest to the coalition. These included food waste reduction, supply chain resilience, healthy food in schools, public health initiatives centering nutrition, and breastfeeding. Coalition members were asked to provide 3 words that describe Grow Montana's value to the food systems work in Montana. Coordination, collaboration, and policy were the words used most to describe the coalition's value. Coalition members were asked how Grow Montana could best serve the broader community of food system and agriculture organizations. The top 3 responses were to focus our efforts on advancing food and ag policy priorities at the state level, networking food and ag organizations, and facilitating multi-organizational priorities. Grow Montana is seen by member organizations as a space to organize towards common goals for food and ag policy priorities, build power, and coordinate intersecting food and ag issues. And it's evident from our member responses that Grow Montana's strengths lie in its ability to identify areas for collaboration and bridge differences for local, state, and regional organizations in building a unified voice in policy. One ally shared, the coalition's greatest asset to the food systems community is its role as a statewide advocacy hub, emphasizing the communication and networking value the coalition adds to food systems partners. All right, and now I'll hand it over to Minna for the next part of the presentation.
Thanks, Maura. So now I'm going to touch upon some of the survey results around funding and membership. So Grow Montana currently has this 3-tier model that's described in the image to the right. And we took the opportunity in the survey to ask how the coalition should be funding its work to ensure that we are creating an inclusive and equitable coalition. So approximately 80% of members who responded to the survey are interested in contributing financially to Grow Montana to advance the coalition's goals and priorities. Member and ally organizations acknowledge that member contributions are an important way to sustainably fund Grow Montana's work, but the coalition should avoid a pay-to-play model structure and instead require financial contributions based on organizational capacity. Some other ideas for equitable membership contributions included a 2-tiered sliding scale, where steering committee members and non-steering committee members contribute based on their organizational capacity. In addition to membership contribution, more than half of the member survey respondents shared alternative methods to fund Grow Montana's work. Most members and allies were interested in securing grants or other contributions to support the coalition. One ally shared that it would be important for the coalition to diversify its funding mechanisms beyond just relying on member contributions in order to be sustainable in the long term. All right, next slide, please. Awesome, thank you. So how would member and allies like to engage with Grow Montana? We asked member organizations how they would like to engage with the coalition and contribute to the Grow Montana's goals and priorities. After introducing the concept of working groups in the survey, all member organizations expressed interest in supporting a working group model. And just as a reminder for those of you who potentially didn't take the survey and read our description of a working group, they are a popular organizational structure we found through some research before embarking on the survey process. Working groups are often chaired or co-chaired by a coalition member and are open to the public, which provides an opportunity for individuals or non-member organizations to engage in the work of the coalition without the requirement of membership. Working groups focus on a specific body of work and advance initiatives independently while benefiting from general oversight from the coalition steering committee. Currently, the coalition relies on a subcommittee structure to advance different bodies of work, and these groups are collectively run by members only who volunteer to take on additional responsibilities within the coalition. And so these working groups would differ a little bit in terms of how they're run and also the membership structure. So So with that in mind, after introducing the concept, all member organizations actually expressed an interest in supporting a working group model, which is really exciting for the future of Grow Montana. Members indicated that the top 3 working groups most relevant to their organization's work and possibly what they'd like to see within the coalition if we pursue this structure, are 1, community food systems, 2, food access, and 3, regenerative agriculture. Nearly half of the members that responded noted that they'd be interested in a leadership position of a working group. In addition to working groups, members would also like to advance the coalition's goals and priorities by bringing their organization's voice to Grow Montana's priorities and participate in shaping the priority issues of Grow Montana. And in terms of members, all 3 of the ally participants, in terms of allies, all 3 of the ally participants are interested in shaping Grow Montana's priority issues, and 2 are interested in participating in a working group or elevating the coalition's priority issues and action opportunities to their personal organization members. All ally respondents would like a little bit more information on working groups before committing to participating in them in the future. So next slide. We also took the opportunity in the survey to ask our members and our allies if their voices are being heard and some of their thoughts on representation within the organization. Overall, most Grow Montana member survey respondents felt that the organizational voice is being heard within the coalition. A small portion of respondents wrote in with answers that expressed the organization's voice was being heard overall, but felt more could be done on behalf of their individual organization to take greater advantage of their current membership. One ally expressed that, one ally expressed that their voice was being heard through a member organization, and then another ally expressed that their voice was not being currently heard since they're not part of a member organization represented in the coalition at this time. We also asked respondents, Mar, if we could flip back to the last slide. Sorry about that. We also asked respondents to share examples of voices that they felt they're not being represented within the coalition beyond just their organizations. And these are some of the examples that our respondents gave. And the most predominant answers were BIPOC voices, tribal voices and native voices, tribal organizations and tribal ag organizations, and producer voices as well, which this includes conventional farmers and ranchers as well as non-conventional. So in our next question, in our next section, pursuing this concept of equity that Mara had mentioned earlier, on our next slide, we also asked our members and allies what kind of work in equity that they were pursuing within their organization. And something that really was exciting about the results is that we saw that all of our participants are working on equity in some sort of way within their organization and their food and ag policy work. Our members are contributing to equity within the space by either providing equity trainees to their staff and organization's board, directing programs to underserved communities, providing equity-focused education to members, and just in general, rethinking about food and agriculture work to include and center equity. And within our members, 31% of them participated in the 21-week challenge, which was hosted by Arrow last year, and is again being hosted this year. In terms of our allies, again, they are also working on advancing equity in their work in some way. And the biggest actions that they're taking are rethinking food and agriculture work to include equity, and then providing equity training to their members within the organization. And then when we asked members and allies about what we as a coalition could do to help support their equity work and advance equity within their issues, our members included that it'd be helpful for more support on recruitment within their organization, providing staff equity trainings, and also for Grow Montana to develop equity-focused policies. And when we asked allies about what we could do to help advance their equity work, they had provided some feedback that focused on staff equity trainings. And with that, that brought us to the end of our survey. themes, and I'm going to hand it back over to Mara to share with you all some of the considerations that we came up with after the survey analysis, and something that we presented to the steering committee and coalition in the last couple of months for consideration for future planning and strategic planning specifically.
Thanks, Minna. All right, so as Minna mentioned, as a result of our survey analysis, we've come up with several considerations that we're recommending that the coalition and steering committee investigate. So based on the survey analysis, the following considerations are presented. The coalition should strategize on how to expand Grow Montana's convening role to create opportunities to support and advance a healthy, equitable, and resilient food system in Montana. Explore and implement a new approach for member contributions that support the operations of the coalition with the goal of ensuring participation regardless of financial contribution. We should also investigate additional models of funding beyond member organization contributions, such as fundraising through active social media and grants. And we should also commit to a working group structure in which groups are co-chaired by members and open to the public to promote more community engagement. We should also consider developing a shared understanding and definition of equity and develop an equity statement to coincide with our mission and vision statement. And Grow Montana should also consider how we can be more open to tribal and BIPOC partners and organizations, as well as engaging people with lived experience. This may include investing in one-on-one outreach and/or stipends for participation on the steering committee for those who are not provided compensation for their involvement in the coalition. And as far as our next steps, we really identified those as sharing this report with our coalition. We did that at our last meeting in October, and also to share it here with all of you at the Aero Expo and collect feedback, which we'll be doing hopefully in our breakout sessions a little bit later. We have the full survey analysis to share with you all, and I'll drop that link in the chat. And we welcome any thoughts you might have now or later after you have an opportunity to look through the full analysis. And then that combined feedback will be shared with the steering committee to help guide the conversation around these considerations as we move forward. And really, we want to just keep this conversation going past today. So you are always welcome to email me directly. My email is there on the slide, but I'll drop that in the link as well. So from there, that's the end of our presentation. I'll stop share. And before we head out into our breakout groups, we'd welcome any initial impressions, questions, or thoughts. Feel free to use the chat function as well.
I could some things that I've been working on. One thing especially that I'm concerned about is funding and placing training, funding and placing probably young people, perhaps through our university system, directly into needy establishments. That's farms. Kind of the model is right out of Vista. You know, for people who remember Vista, is placing young people into needy neighborhoods in cities and across the country back in the Peace Corps days. But I'm looking for an organization that will really embrace firsthand. One of the problems right next to me is real food, and Laughing Waters, the owners struggle to try to keep a regular staff and then broadening that out across the state. Everywhere I go, I hear that it's nearly impossible to get the right help and to get the right people working in the field or wherever. So funding mechanisms that would both train and position young people for a period of time as workers directly within the establishment as real food. In those establishments that sort of adhere to a set of principles that that this organization would follow about good food. It's just one thing that I've been working on that I'm really concerned about. That's come home to me through people who are really struggling right now to find adequate help and have terrible turnovers of people that don't last with them, and therefore don't have the time to train the people to stay with them. So that's just, I think I'm working on the side of problems, you know, I always have been, rather than grandiose dreams and solutions on paper. That's probably from my experience with government that kind of wore me down. So anybody got any ideas? I'll pick that up, and there's other questions related to that about general funding overall. You know, to take it, when you talk about equity, it seems that new people moving into Montana on the high end, we've had people moving in on the low end, but people moving in on the high end are kind of establishing their West Coast elitist base here in Montana, where the price of organic vegetables is 3 and 4 times higher than what anybody can afford in the supermarket. And local CSAs that need the money, of course, but are directing their clients to be these super high-end people who appreciate good food. Whereas at the lower end, we've got soup pantries where stores and chain stores have for generations dumped surplus low-quality food on poor people. So there's 2 things right there that I think probably got a whole book of things that Gail and I have been working on over the years, but those are 2 that come to mind right now that I think would be worth discussing, where food outlets play in the community to equity directly, and the quality of food that varies on this long circuit between the high-end rich and the poor. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Ken. Thank you. Does anybody have any follow-up to that or any other questions or impressions they'd like to share right now?
I would be curious to know if one way to help with those situations might be more of those CSA programs, and even like doorstop delivery programs offering a higher tier that would help pay for a lower tier. So making it more of a sliding scale. Obviously that would be dependent on each farmer's decision, but maybe like encouraging farmers to use that type of model.
Well, that's a great comment, Allie. And I know from some research I've done and some other projects for like mobile markets and things like that, a sliding scale is something that's been implemented. So I know that there's some models like that. That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And in the chat we have from Alex, livable wages and housing obstacles, difference between rural versus urban challenges, and grants for cleaning efforts to food banks. Those are great comments as well.
And I'm just going to
I
jump in.
wanted to say, I wanted to preface what say that it's extremely important to us. Finding a lot of Montana still operating kind of in a 1950s mode of suburbanites and land developers and things like that, that we get out of this charity mode of the rich and the poor. And when we face up with equity, we face up to this tremendous difference in Montana between the very poor and the very rich. And a lot of the funding mechanisms that empower the organizations are not the funding mechanisms that empower the people that need that. And so charity is always the sliding scale from the very rich paying off their guilt to the very poor. And anything that miles after that, the alternate to me to that in every aspect is empowerment. Teaching people how to get up on their feet, into placement, into jobs, and desperately needing to feed poor people good food. And I don't see the rich doing it for the poor. I see the state doing it for the poor. And I see a combined effort of empowering people to be able to buy their own food at a scale that's reasonable and affordable to them. We've got to get rid of this charity mode. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to die doing it, but it's so sickening to hear people stand on soapboxes talking about feeding the poor. Now, how long do you think that's going on in America? You know, and how often does that not get to the poor even, or keep them in a dependency mode that they never grow out of, and they never even appreciate how to grow out of? They never even learn how to grow out of. They become addicted to a dependency mode. So when I hear equity, I hear get rid of dependency on all scales. So that would go with what I was saying about putting people into operations and getting them working, as opposed to giving them funds to sit and gab or do other things, right? Thanks. Let's shut off now.
Robin, you were gonna chime in. You wanna?
I was just going to say, I'm not sure if it's I was just going to say that there's actually quite a fair amount of work happening at the community level, within the community food systems in a number of communities across the state that are collaborations between food pantries, which are now expanding their resources to include processing kitchens and educational kitchens, and they're collaborating pretty actively with local gleaning efforts and community farmers to be able to provide quality food and support the overall health of their community, and shifting the dynamic of underemployment within our communities. And so I think it's fair to say that there is a significant amount of effort happening and being modeled in communities across the state, focusing on equity at the economic level. And Grow Montana has just set a commitment through its survey results and its intention moving forward to just support those efforts in an ever expanding concentric series of circles. So that's really all I want to say. I know it's probably time to go on out to our breakout sessions. So probably time to do that.
Yeah, I think that this is a good segue to that. We're a little ahead of schedule, but as I mentioned in our earlier session, the breakout sessions never seem like they last long enough. So I'll go ahead and get that started. I think I'll have a little bit of organizing I have to do for a few folks, but I will go ahead and get that going. Hey, Shannon, are you still in the main room?
I am.
Okay, did a box
just
pop up
didn't,
for you?
Huh?
Did a box pop up for you to join a breakout room?
It did. I just don't like breakout rooms.
Okay, yeah, no problem. I'm be off video
Okay.
for the next little bit and just kind of managing some other things. So sounds good.
Okay.
For joining. All right, welcome back, everyone. Guess it's a good sign when you get your 60-minute timer and you don't all come rushing back. So looks like there was some good conversation happening. We've got a few minutes to do some share outs, and we're just going to kind of go around with each group. I'll invite the group facilitator to chime in first, but please, if there's another spokesperson for your group, go ahead and come off mute, and we're going to start with group one. Gretchen was facilitating that group.
Thanks, Mara. I think we had a great discussion with the group of ladies that we had in our breakout session. The big things that we talked about were, general feedback was that the idea of working groups, our group in general thought was a really great model to adopt soon in the Grow Montana coalition. We talked about when we talked about more equitable community, making sure that we think about the balance between empowering people and helping people get to empowerment. We did talk about food pantries and the farm to food pantry idea, and making sure that livable wages and equitable work are an entangled issue that is probably important for us to consider when we think of equity as well. Because we did talk about the VISTA program, and that VISTAs take a vow of poverty, and they are really helping advance our work in many ways. So it's interesting crossover. We also talked about other folks to get involved. So there were some suggestions about MSU, the 7 food ag and development centers throughout the state, the Department of Agriculture, more folks like Michael McCormick, who really bring a business model to the work that we're talking about, and might some folks like that be good allies to help Grow Montana inform their stuff in the future. And then Barb put something in the chat that I didn't. Do you want to say anything about that, Barb? Okay. And if anyone else in our group has something to add, that's kind of where we were at.
Okay, great. Thanks, Gretchen, and your group for that great conversation and taking notes. We'll pass it on to group 2. Minna was leading that conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Mara. Group 2, there were 3 of us. So we had a nice small group, but it allowed for a really thoughtful and deep conversation about some of the items that we discussed in the survey and sort of Grow Montana and food systems issues beyond. So we first got to know each other a little bit, our perspectives, me coming from a nonprofit setting, one of our members, Kristen, who's a producer, and then Alex, who's working as an AmeriVista member as well. So we brought all of these different perspectives to the conversation, which I think was really exciting, and sort of notes this overall work of getting more inclusive, including more voices in Grow Montana's formation and visioning. So we there were a few questions about our survey process that we went through, which I think was really great to sort of introduce more about like Grow Montana's beginnings, objective of the survey, getting into sort of Grow Montana's history, and different ideas of how people can learn more about Grow Montana, because I think we sort of came to this conversation with different understandings of what the coalition is. And then also both Kristen and Alex had some really good thoughts about food access issues that sort of were inspired by our initial conversation in the large group before going to breakout rooms, and talking about like how we can leverage all of the work that's being done on the ground within their communities, different communities, to advance equity and increase food access. We talked a little bit about food sovereignty, especially within the conversation of equity. Then when we talked about working groups, there was enthusiasm behind that. But of course, understanding that like each person brings sort of different capacities and different skills to the table. So like, how can we make sure that it's an accessible and inclusive space for people who want to engage, but there's some really exciting momentum. And then when we asked about like sort of the different relationships that Grow Montana should develop. People threw out some really great ideas. Some of them are producers, tribal voices, potentially like even new like beginning farmers, accessing that community, and just like as Gretchen said too, tapping more into the university systems and sort of the academic resources, seeing how we can build relationships with folks at MSU Ag Extension and such. And then there were also some really great ideas about how to connect Grow Montana to the local level, acknowledging that like folks have different sort of lifestyle demands and those sorts of things. So again, capacity is different, but some ideas were getting word out about Grow Montana at farmers markets, through like other community gathering spaces, word of mouth, which is really powerful. Again, connecting farmers and using those networks to spread sort of word about Grow Montana, and then outreach programs specifically within specific communities. And I think Alex mentioned Double Snap Dollars is doing some outreach efforts, so like doing something maybe similar. And yeah, it was a really great conversation. I just want to say thanks to the group again for sharing your thoughts and your perspectives.
Awesome. Thank you, Mena. Exciting to hear all of those different ideas and that we can take back to the coalition and kind of start figuring out how we can maybe put some of these things in action. So last but not least is our group 3. And Robin, will you be leading that, or anyone else in your group? And you're on mute.
Yes, I will lead it. I was on it this time, unlike session 1. So under the general feedback and impressions, there was a focus on and a general consensus was good to see the level at which food access was coming forward as a focus area, as well as farm to market and food processing. And how much the feedback was strongly aligned with expanding ways for groups to become involved, especially through working groups. And across the board, I think there was a consensus about it's really important that we keep equity at the heart of everything that we do. And in that area of focusing on that, one idea that Ian brought forward from CFAC is the work that they're doing there about how they can engage better at the community level, sort of at a real connection level. And he shared about the projects that they're working on developing with just trying to, they're putting together some funding packages and are working with BIPOC and tribal community groups to develop a partnership structure that will allow them to just hand the money over within the context of a particular common goal and not be shall we say, whatever, micromanaging the use of the funds, more in alignment with this concept of communities know their best practices. And a big piece of that, though, is capacity building. And a question came up on that he posed to us is that possibly Grow Montana might be able to expand that work, working together as a coalition. He did mention, I think if I got the name right, they're working with a consulting agency called Native Nexus that's helping them write a tribal engagement plan that will more accurately and hopefully properly devise a relationship plan that speaks, just speaks from the tribal voice rather than coming from our traditional white settler voice. So anyways, there was some conversation about how that might be something Grow Montana could support and play with. It's got a lot of positive feedback from the rest of us. And then with respect to working groups, I think everybody thinks that they're a great idea. It is fundamentally for Grow Montana, it is a question for the coalition on how to be able to do that well. It's a question of capacity. We've gotten a lot of momentum at the community level in terms of our voices and our participation, as we saw from the survey, but in reality, we are just still in the process of rebooting and developing the funds that would allow us to do the work that we all want to see happen. But definitely consensus across the board that working groups are a great way to engage, and that they're a key and supportive way for empowerment and grassroots hands-on projects that are so critical for connection. And then in the area of other allies, yes, absolutely, everybody's in favor of those. And a focus area is that, you know, as was demonstrated, we don't have many voices, if any, from Eastern Montana, and still even to some areas of Central Montana. And it's so important on so many levels for Grow Montana, not the least of which is our ability to move policy forward. And so how to go about doing that. And we were at the end of our time, but we had just started discussing how do we get into relationship building, because that's really seems to be the way, you know, there's just no substitute for connection, face-to-face time, breaking bread, talking, connecting, finding common ground. And one area that we have support is that we have coalition members, MOA and Northern Plains Resource Councils, who have members who live in that area and could be an avenue for helping develop more coalition ally relationships in Eastern Montana. So that's where we got to before we ended.
Great, thanks, Robin. I also wanted just to point out, Erin shared in the chat that connecting with local food policy councils at the community or city level could be another avenue. I think that's a great idea. The City of Missoula Food Policy Council, and then I think I'm not. If folks know of others, please share them or send them our way, because I've done a little search. I was aware of the Missoula Open and Local is part of Grow Montana, but I think it's kind of, I did a search and there doesn't seem to be very many, or at least I'm not looking in the right places. So if you know of others that we could maybe reach out to, please send them our way.
I think Missoula deserves a prize across the board in the state for so much activism, so much involvement in local government. I think the university is a big asset there. But I think that we've got a lot of organizations that are trying to rebuild after this pandemic. And there's a danger in shooting off to make us important as organizations rather than really seeing the comprehensive work that's been done over the years. And I think Missoula takes the cake. Thanks.
Thanks, Ken. Yep, a lot of really wonderful things are happening in Missoula. CFAC is a great partner, not only with Grow Montana, but with other work that we're doing at NCAT. And I just dropped the link to Grow Montana's website into the chat. I'm going to put my email in there real quick too. And please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. If I don't know the answer, I will reach out to folks and try and find it and get back to you. And with that, Robin, did you have any final remarks that you wanted to make for the rest of the expo?
No, just that there's many more sessions and we invite everybody to participate. There's it's so valuable and important to hear everybody's voices and for folks to get a chance to share their thoughts and ideas and build on the work everyone's doing. So thank you, Maura. Great job facilitating these two sessions.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you everyone for joining. I really appreciate it and look forward to connecting with you all soon. So have a great afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye, Maura. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.